That's what we've been covering here. Now, in lactation, the first milk produced by mother's first milk is colostrum. And that by no means is the actual milk product, but it is a mixture of all the antibody proteins that her body has ever built. And so what colostrum is the child's first immunity, his or her first defense mechanism. So at birth, colostrum is ready. Colostrum can be absorbed by the baby's stomach in the first 24 to 48 hours. And as we talked about early in the semester, in that first 24 to 48, that stomach's open to these large proteins and can absorb those. After that, the stomach seals itself to the extent of only allowing 3 things through it. We remember what 3 things that can pass through that stomach as an adult?
Alcohol, aspirin, and
Botulism. Yeah, something disgusting like botulism. So that's the case. Now, from that, they talk about what brings on milk production. Now, before the baby's born, we don't need milk production, obviously. So we need milk production after the birth of the child. So there's a lot of theories. They believe that estrogen, progesterone, maybe a combination of both, plays a role in blocking prolactin. Prolactin is the hormone that's going to encourage the body to make milk. And so what we get into is delivery of the placenta, shortly after the child is born, plummets the hormones involved in that pregnancy, primarily progesterone and quite a bit of estrogen is plummeted. I mean, when the placenta comes out, it's like sucking the hormones out of the system. And that plummet allows prolactin to kick in. So now you'll start getting milk production, and you should have milk available 2 to 3 days after that baby's born. Sometimes a day longer, sometimes a little quicker. It just depends on that particular body. But milk production will come in. Now, from that point, to get milk let down, that doesn't mean it just comes pouring in and pouring out at the same time. Milk let down is nursing of the child, like we talked about earlier. Nursing of the child causes the pituitary to produce oxytocin. And that'd be the posterior pituitary is going to give it off. The hypothalamus actually produces it. And oxytocin causes milk letdown. So nursing of the child, oxytocin, milk letdown. It could be crying of the child. It could be auditory cue. So crying of the child, oxytocin, milk letdown. It doesn't even have to be your child. It could be crying of anybody's child. So you have to be prepared all the time. So there's kind of the scenario on milk production or lactation. They list on 740 prolactin secreted by the anterior pituitary stimulates the mammary glands after parturition to produce milk proteins, including casein and lactalbumin. Prolactin secretion is controlled by prolactin inhibiting hormone identified as dopamine, which is released by the hypothalamus into the hypophyseal portal system of vessels. Thus, during pregnancy, high levels of estrogen help prepare the mammary glands for lactation, but prevent prolactin. So, estrogen prepares the mammary glands, but what really matures the mammary glands is progesterone. It'll mature them and advance the ductwork of the mammary glands so they can produce milk. But they just said it's the estrogen that stops prolactin from being available prior to birth of the child. After parturition, when the placenta is expelled, declining levels of estrogen are accompanied by an increase in secretion of prolactin. Milk production, therefore, is stimulated. If a woman does not wish to breastfeed her baby, she may take oral estrogens to inhibit prolactin secretion. That is old school and bogus in today's time. They don't do that. If you decide not to breastfeed, you'll just don't breastfeed. You'll have to go cold turkey. If the body is not secreting any milk, it'll quit producing milk. And then it'll dry up what's built up, and you'll eventually quit producing. So the cold turkey aspect, they feel like is the best way besides the drugs deal. They've taken that out. They don't even give those anymore. So here's the problem with the cold turkey aspect. Lots of milk production, the breasts swell, they get warm, they become extremely sensitive, pain. I mean, there's pain, and a lot of times they actually do give pain pills for this, but on the woman's, on her end of it, she needs to support them as much as they can, whatever she can find to support them, so they don't, the less they move, the better, because the more they move, the heavier they are, the more pain involved. And it's gonna take a couple of weeks for this to start going away. So, even if you do breastfeed, at some point you're gonna stop. At some point. Now you can slow the process a little bit, not feed the baby as often, where at first you may be feeding on intervals of a couple hours. Then maybe you go back to work and intervals go from a couple hours to 4 or 5 hours or more. And then as the baby gets older, you can spread that interval even further out, and your milk production will actually back off. So that it does help some, but there's no perfect idea for this. So anyway, this bromocriptine is not something that they use anymore. The act of nursing helps to maintain high levels of prolactin secretion via the neuroendocrine reflex sensory endings in the breast activated by stimulus of suckling, relays impulses to the hypothalamus, and inhibits secretion of prolactin inhibiting hormones. So if it inhibits that, then we're promoting prolactin, obviously. Then they go on and talk about oxytocin and the milk ejection reflex with the milk letdown. Now, the last thing they're adding to this on 742 is breastfeeding as far as immunity, and I think we've identified the fact is an extremely good immune system. It's the only immune system they really have until they can build their own. Now, at what point do they build their own? This is a test question. I tried to prepare you in chapter 15.
Shortly after birth.
Shortly after birth, yeah. First month's way too precise for us, Josh. It could be for you, but somebody else it may be the second month. So definitely shortly after birth. We not really put a finger on exactly when it is, but the breastfeeding supplements the immune protection given to the infant by the mother. Now they do believe there is some immunity in utero, so they do have some, but it gets even better with colostrum. While the fetus is in utero, hemoglobin G, antibodies cross the placenta from the maternal to the fetal. These antibodies provide passive immune protection, and that's all colostrum is. We listed it under the passive category. 3 to 12 months after birth. So the baby gets some in utero, gets more in colostrum. Now to me, if they get enough in utero, why would we produce colostrum? It just adds more protection. So nothing better than a booster shot, right? That's what that is. We get a little bit in utero, we get a booster shot with colostrum.
With babies that aren't breastfed, is their immune system develop slower?
I don't know if they develop slower. They basically what they document is they may be ill more often. Where they get exposed by these little passive immunities, whether it be in utero or by colostrum, their immune system may recognize it and not be sick as long, or may not even get sick because they have some immunity to fight it off. If they've never seen it before, they're starting at ground zero, and the slightest little cold may make them sick, and instead of being sick 3 days, now they're sick 5 days. Or most viruses run about a 7 to 9 day cycle on colds or whatever. And you notice you take a child to the doctor and they've got a cold, and a lot of doctors even tell you, I believe they have a cold or they have a virus, and they'll give you amoxicillin. And they'll tell you to take that amoxicillin for 10 days. Explain that. They're playing on your ignorance. They're giving you amoxicillin, not your child. Because you think your child needs something, so they give it amoxicillin, which is absolutely going to do nothing, because the virus will run its cycle in 7 to 9 days on its own, but they gave mom or dad the placebo of the amoxicillin. That's why, you know, they claim we take too many antibiotics. That's one reason why. Now granted, there's a lot of people don't understand that concept. And my cousin is a physician's assistant, and has just recently got out of school, and she works for the Indians out here, and she gets cracked up with the people that come in. Just recently, the stomach virus is going around. She even had it herself, because she said she had like 10 people come in one day vomiting all over the office and wondered why she didn't get it, you know, but she got it. They come in and want an antibiotic to stop this. She said it's unreal. I mean, they're ignorant of the fact that antibiotics don't affect viruses. And y'all are educated now, so y'all know better. But it aggravates me when a doctor says, well, they have a virus, it'll run its toll, but here's a script of amoxicillin. I may take the script, I don't go fill it. No need to fill it. Now, if that turns into a throat infection or an ear infection because of the increased mucus that develops, yeah, then I might go get the amoxicillin to help settle that. But they typically, I told her, I said, y'all need to get a drug company just to create you just a glucose liquid or a glucose pill for the adults. It's, oh, I got your fix right here. If you can hold these down right here, you'll be done in about 48 hours. It'll take care of it. And all it is a sugar pill. And of course somebody find out about it and sue them for giving bad stuff or what. But that's what it comes down to is those things typically take its toll. Most of those viruses will survive them, but they're gonna have to run their toll. I think that stomach virus is running about 48 hours and you're starting to feel better. And most of those kind of viruses run about 48 hours. The flu, it may drag out for a week and it'll have a variety more symptoms with it. But you can go to the doctor. What are they gonna do for you? If you're dehydrated, you can get some liquids. And the liquids could slow down vomiting and certainly help with dehydration and help you hold something else down. But that's in the extreme case that you can't hold down something anyway. Gatorade, water, Jello. Instead of the Jello in a Jello form, I like it warm right off the stovetop. And it works pretty good. It settles things up. So if you can hold down Pepto-Bismol, that'd probably make you vomit some more, wouldn't it? Kind of the color of Curly's shirt over there. Curly's wearing Pepto-Bismol today. Any other comments over that? Really wouldn't expect any from y'all. Y'all are so.
Just stay away from that stomach bug that's going on.
Oh, it's vicious.
It's nasty.
My son got it last week. He texted me like at 3:40 in the morning and said, "Safe to say I have a stomach virus." Of course, his mother, she texted him the next morning. I'm gonna take a day off and come up there. I said, you know how embarrassing that would be. Mama show up with a can of chicken noodle soup and knock on the door. His roommate said, oh, your mama drove 2.5 hours to take care of your little stomach. I said, just leave the boy alone. He's gonna have to get over it eventually. And he was. He had some good roommates, and one of them headed off to Walmart, and the other one went in there and like, dude, you vomit one more time, I'm dragging your hide to the hospital. You've been throwing up all night. And the other one went and got him Gatorade and saltine crackers and chicken noodle soup, and they took care of him. They're probably sicker than a dog now, but they took care of him. My son probably bailed on them, but oh, it's awful. But that's the case. These young children, I mean, the reason we don't build great immunities against colds and flus is because there's over 150 different kinds of all of them. And by the time your immune system sees cold number 1 and goes through the other 149 and cold number 1 comes back around, your immune system's like, I think I remember that, but I'm not sure. So you get a touch of this cold again. It's crazy. It's almost like a student I had in 1990. I think I had you in class 1. I don't remember, I recognize faces, but Hebert, there'll be a day I won't have any recollection even having you in class. And I've got a feeling that's coming pretty soon. Moving on here to, these antibodies provide this passive immunity up to about 12 months after birth. Infants that are breastfed also receive IgA. So you get into another category of antibodies that they didn't get. They got IgG in utero. Now they're getting IgA. Of course, we know IgA comes from milk, right? Remember that one? Which provides additional passive immunity. So we're getting a booster and then some. In addition, the mother's milk contains cytokines, lymphocytes, antibodies that promote development of the baby's system to build an active immunity. So the ability of the baby to produce its own antibodies is not well developed for several months after birth. So, I mean, we're playing it safe and saying shortly after birth. They think it can do something, or they wouldn't offer shots before the baby leaves the hospital. But we don't really have our finger on any of that. I know in studies in cattle, of course, when you deal with the length of the life of a cow compared to the length of the life of a human, it doesn't correspond. But if we had a mathematical wizard in here that could work out some numbers, a baby calf really can't start building immunity till about 60 days after they're born. So what would 60 days correlate to us? Way on out there, wouldn't it? It's not going to be an equivalent 60 days. So it's 60 days before we start giving immunizations to calves. And there's a little bit of research said they do respond at 30, but their best response comes at about 60 days. So breastfeeding, acting through reflex inhibition of GnRH, can also inhibit the secretion of gonadotropins from the mother's anterior pituitary and thus inhibit ovulation. Breastfeeding is thus a natural contraceptive mechanism that helps to space births. Now let's talk about breastfeeding as a natural contraception. I'm standing here today to tell you it's not very good natural contraception. And it's not very good because in today's time, I think we have more availability of food or food sources, which makes our body to be considered healthier. Therefore, it might trigger an ovulation even before menstruation. This is what gets a lot of women right here, is that they may ovulate and they've not had a cycle since they started breastfeeding, but they're ovulating. So they don't ever cycle, they ovulate, they get pregnant, and here we go again. Next one's cooking in the oven. Now, this is literally what kicks it in. To be successful, that's what this book drives at. They call them successful breastfeeders and unsuccessful breastfeeders. A successful breastfeeder is one that breastfeeds their child and does not get pregnant. Has nothing to do with milk production. An unsuccessful breastfeeder is one that is breastfeeding their child and gets pregnant again. Now, that's their description. So here's the scenario. This is literally typically what happens. I think there's laws out there today that says you can stay home for 6 weeks, no questions asked, from your job, and take care of that baby. Okay? I believe the law actually applies to husband and wife. Although they laughed at me when I wanted to take off 6 weeks of my last one. I thought, I'll file a lawsuit on you, and I'll stay home 6 weeks, but I didn't. I thought that was pretty chauvinist, though, not letting me stay home with my baby.
You should ask for your 6 weeks now.
I'll take it at the end when I retire.
Where's gender equality when you need it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, there's no gender equality.
where's the men's rights activists up in arms?
Go to work. There's your men's rights activist. So mom stays home for 6 weeks, and granted, when the baby cries in the middle of the night, who is it that gets up with it, Amber? Mom, yeah. Of course, if mom's breastfeeding, it's like, mom's got everything the baby wants, you know, dad's just gonna be in the way here, so we're like, baby's crying. So here she rolls out of bed after just getting back in bed, you know. So she breastfeeds this child on regular intervals. I mean, it may be 2-3 hour intervals, 24/7. Okay, not much sleep involved. That's why this is for young people, not old people. Us old people need our sleep again. Okay, she does this on a consistent basis for 6 weeks. Okay, now she's going back to work. She goes back to work and she breastfeeds the child before she leaves that morning, drops the child off at the babysitter, goes to work. When do you think she gets relief again? Child's not with her to breastfeed. She gets relief at lunch, eating a sandwich with a breast pump, right? Now, there's a few occasions where she might get to go see the baby and breastfeed, but very few occasions. Okay, so that 2-hour interval's already gone from 7 o'clock to 11:30 or whatever. We spread that interval out. So we're not requiring as much milk production. So we're slowing down prolactin. Okay, maybe if she's lucky, she gets a mid-afternoon break and maybe gets some more relief. If not, it's 5 o'clock before she gets relief again. Now, not only is she hurting, but she's not staying on regular intervals. Now, it doesn't take long to do this very often, but her cycles start back because her body says, I'm not putting as much effort in this milk production now. We can go ahead and try for another one. Your body's saying that and forgot to tell you is what's happening. And that's exactly when ovulation may occur without menstruation. We may just go straight into an egg production. So that's the typical case that happens. So when those intervals become inconsistent or consistently longer than they once were, that's where you have to watch out. That's where you need to use some type of birth control if you're not wanting another one immediately, because it can happen. All right, so breastfeeding, they say, is a natural contraceptive. They didn't have any other choices in the day, okay? So they also had 10 or 15 kids. So you tell me how good it was. It wasn't very good, was it? Of course, maybe they wanted 10 or 15 kids. This mechanism appears to be most effective in women with limited caloric intake. Now that's, so you're somewhat starving your body. You don't want to do that. You don't want to limit your caloric intake if you're breastfeeding. I mean, that's going to be a great way of losing the weight that you gained with the baby to start with is breastfeeding. But you still don't want to starve yourself to death. And you want to stay on the prenatal vitamins. It may be postnatal, but we're producing lots of calcium in this milk. Where's it going to come from? The bone, if you don't have it in your diet. You'd have to sit around gnawing a lot of cheese and drink a lot of milk to supplement that. So stay on those prenatal vitamins. Let's see, limited caloric intake, and in those who breastfeed their babies at frequent intervals throughout the day and night. In the traditional societies of less industrialized nations, breastfeeding is an effective contraception. And what they're saying in less industrialized nations, these people are breastfeeding because they don't have any other options. And they have very little caloric intake, so they're not in very good health. They're not going to cycle if they're not in very good health. Now, if you're breastfeeding in one hand and got a Big Mac in the other, we have food availability. That'd be pretty awesome. Driving down, I could see a woman doing that, breastfeeding her baby while driving down the road, eating a Big Mac and putting her makeup on at the same time and get to work on time. Can you see that, Ron? It happens every day. I meet them on the road every day. That's called defensive driving, Josh. You got to see that stuff coming. When you meet females driving and they're never looking toward you or the road, you know something else is going on. When they're up like this, you know something's going on. You don't ever do that, do you, Carly? Good girl. Breastfeeding has much less of a contraceptive effect in women who are well nourished and who breastfeed their babies at more widely spaced intervals. It's consistency is what they're looking at. And we've done studies. Of course, we do studies on animals and apply it to humans, and do studies on humans and apply it to animals. And we've done tons of studies on animals. For instance, if we're trying to synchronize a set of cows up, if we want them to come in heat faster, we hold up all the calves for 48 hours. We don't let them nurse, nothing. The cows just, you think, well, that'll stress the cows out. Their body hadn't figured it out yet. What it does is screw the hormones around. We're not producing all that prolactin. We're producing more prolactin-inhibiting hormone, which kicks in more estrogen that feeds a developing follicle. Now we get follicle-stimulating hormone, and we come in heat faster. So, and that's just exactly what they're saying there. It's more widely spaced intervals. If the calf's out there on the cow 24/7, they nurse whenever they want to, just like it would when the baby's at home and you're at home. Same exact scenario. Her body's thinking, oh my gosh, she just lost a calf. We need to cycle again so we can get another calf going. That's what her body's saying. So we finish and conclude this chapter. We really, if you think about it, the concluding remarks there in the chapter says we finish at the beginning. We end at the beginning. Did we not? We did, didn't we? And I ask every class this every year, would it have been easier to start at chapter 20 and go backwards? Or did this thing build on itself all the way through?
Built on itself.
It would have just been breaking it down from the beginning to the, well, I guess we'd have gone from the beginning back to the beginning. We started at atoms and molecules and the chemistry of life and built those cells into organs and systems and made it to the last system in which we put two cells together again and made a complete system again.
Like getting old, you go through life all the way and you end up back in diapers. Peeing and pooping or
That's
something.
why we have the pens, that's right. You're exactly right. And we changed the kids' diapers when they were little, and they change ours when we're old, if you
Some
have good
people
kids.
never leave their diapers.
Well, that would be males, I'm sure, that never grow up and get out of their diapers.
They're just lazy.
It's true. Good kids are supposed to take care of their parents, so one day we'll have that problem to deal with, but they took care of us, that's why we're here today. All right, you have your study guide out? Did we work on that study guide over the weekend? No, we're gonna do the study guide on there too.
Okay.
So with y'all working on the study guide over the weekend, we have less to have to deal with, huh?
Well, I don't know about that.
Chapter or test 6 study guide there. As we go down through here, we had and I'm just gonna quickly read down through there because most of this stuff's already in your notes. I have a few comments to make. Number 1, humoral versus cell-mediated. That was the first day of lecture in chapter 15. We put humoral, cell-mediated, we put active and passive, and what was specific and non-specific on the board. So if you have the notes that I put up on the board that day, you've got this covered. And that's basically B cells versus T cells, it's antibodies versus phagocytosis. Yeah, you got it right there. Number 2, memory cells originate from what other cell?
Plasma cells.
Plasma cells produce B cells, which produce memory cells. And a lot of the memory cells are called memory B cells. So plasma, B, and memory. Plasma, B, and memory. Number 3, where are B cells and T cells made and matured? B cells made and matured in the bone marrow. T cells, thymus. There are some T cells made in lymphocytes. There are some made in bone marrow, but ultimately they'll say it all finishes up out there in the thymus because of thymosin. So, active versus passive, I think we've covered that. Actually acquiring it to temporary relief and passive. We used a ton of examples. Be familiar with those examples in passive. We used colostrum. We used snakebite. We used tetanus, rabies, I think. So be familiar with those examples they give in the book. No primary male and female hormones. These are essential. Primary female, progesterone, estrogen. Progesterone maintains a pregnancy. Estrogen is the primary hormone of the female. Testosterone for the male. Or it might say androgens. That's the same thing. Purpose of gonadotropic hormones, to encourage the gonads to produce eggs and sperm. I mean, it's kind of a common sense question. Spermatogenesis, maintain secondary sex characteristics, maintenance of the system. I mean, it's common sense stuff is why we need those. 7's just definitions: gametogenesis, spermiogenesis, and spermatogenesis. Just look those definitions up. Semen consists of, in number 8, sperm, prostate, That's prostatic fluid, seminal vesicle fluid. Which one produces the most?
Seminal vesicle.
Seminal vesicles, yeah, I think they had as much
90%.
as 60 to 90. 70% really hits that pretty good, and 20 to 30% prostatic fluid. The minimum is the sperm, and there's still 150 to 300 million of those. Number 9, if the target organ is removed, what would be the result of the stimulating hormones? Would they increase or decrease?
Increase.
Increase, because they're not getting feedback. They're gonna continue to increase until they get a feedback. You know, if I talked real quiet to you and you didn't hear, I'd continue to increase my voice until you heard me and responded. So same difference. Number 10, Leydig cells contain receptors for, we did this one in class. What do you have?
Male sex hormone.
What is it?
Leydig cells.
Leydig cells contain receptors for what
The
hormone?
male sex hormones.
Testosterone.
LH, actually. Luteinizing hormone, which produces testosterone. He is a step ahead of yourself there a little bit. Number 11, inhibin inhibits what? FSH. Number 12, luteal phase consists primarily of what hormone? Progesterone, very good. And 13 is just definitions. 14, the positive feedback that forces ovulation is an increase of what? What estrogen first, and then that forces the surge of LH, which forces the ovulation. Sure, Dave, you learned anything in here?
Yeah. Of course.
Boy, that was said with confidence, wasn't it? You passed your makeup test. if
Did
that's-
I?
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
You didn't exactly set any records, but I think you was in the C's. Oxytocin functions, if we don't have those down by now, just for short, uterine contractions and milk letdown. 16, what gland controls ovulation and menstruation?
Hypothalamus.
Hypothalamus. When in doubt, put the hypothalamus. What causes fever?
The endogenous pyrogen.
Endogenous pyrogens. Sounds like a pirate, doesn't it? It's a fire maniac is what that is. Tumors, benign versus malignant. You don't want either one, but if you had to choose, which one would you take? Benign is much better than malignant. Malignant metastasis, it travels throughout the body. Metastasize, metastase, metastase, it moves.
It grows fast.
Yeah. And the term cancer, it literally means claw, like crab claws, because it'll get its fingers into the blood supply or the lymph supply, and then that's where it travels. All right, 19, define antigens and what are they made of? Antigens, anything that causes immune response. There's your definition. They're proteins. That's what they are. Are there more B or T lymphocytes?
T.
That's what I would think, but it's not.
Is it not?
I would think that because of memory cells and things like that, but there are more T cells. I used to have a page down for that, but I don't have the page number. I actually I got in an argument with a student and I lost.
Yeah, it says 65 to 85% in the blood.
T cells.
That's what it
T
says.
cells.
Yeah. Just sitting around pondering on that, I probably went B cells, and in fact I did at one time, but I was wrong. Not very often, but I was wrong that day. 21. What subclass would indicate an allergic reaction? IgE, found in milk. Which one was found in milk? IgA, because you go to the IgA to get milk. Y'all cannot forget that one. If you miss that one on the test, I may just flunk it.
Are there gonna be a bunch of those IgE, IgA, GNRA?
Those top three. IgE, IgE, IgA. IgE, IgA,
IgG.
IgG, that's right. Mast cells causes the release of what?
Histamine.
Histamines. Who demonstrated the first successful vaccine?
Emil
Jenner.
Adult von Behring.
Well, yeah, I know the one you're talking about. We're gonna go with Jenner on this. He wasn't actually recognized till after Jenner really forced the issue. Von Behring or something, wasn't it? Adolf von Behring or, anyway, we're gonna go with Edward Jenner because he tried to kill the neighbor's kid. AIDS attacks what lymphocyte?
T lymphocyte.
Helper T. Helper T. What age does your immune system begin to develop?
Shortly after.
Shortly
birth.
after birth. Be familiar with some autoimmune diseases. Right at the end of chapter 15, they had several listed, whether it be lupus or arthritis. Just be familiar with those. Barr bodies are found in male or female?
Female.
Female. What is the SRY gene?
Sex determining region.
Sex determining region of the Y. Know the layers of the uterus. We talked primarily about the endometrium, but there was two other layers.
Parametrium and the myometrium.
Parametrium and myometrium, very good. Oral contraceptives mimic the
Luteal.
luteal phase and prevents
Menstruation.
ovulation.
Ovulation.
Yeah. We gotta stop the egg, or we're not gonna stop the pregnancy. Characterize the follicular phase. Now, when I say characterize, there's a chart in your book, and I put it up on the board. To characterize it, we would be fairly high in follicle stimulating hormone, right? Luteinizing hormone is really null and void until about day 13. Estrogen's normal and it surges on day 12. Is that making sense? And you got that surge on 12, luteinizing hormone surge on 13, we get ovulation on day 14. So progesterone, it's like non-existent in this phase, but starts climbing toward the end. So. 32, what hormone is primarily involved with mammary gland development during gestation? Yeah, I think I've thrown this question off the test because in mammary gland development, it's strictly said in the book estrogen. The actual test question answer, they didn't even have estrogen as a choice, they had prolactin. So what they did is worded the question wrong. So I think I've totally taken this one off the test. I don't even think it exists. But we do know prolactin builds milk, but estrogen prepares the breast for lactation. So no question there. 33, explain parturition. Well,
It's the process of giving birth.
it is the process of giving birth. When you explain parturition, what brings on the onset, what have we learned about it? Pretty much nothing. We've thrown all kinds of theories out there, and they all go back to what we know about other animals, where the fetus produces a cortisol, which they believe triggers the sensitivity of the uterus. At the same time, in other animals, we see progesterone levels fall and estrogen levels rise, but in humans, progesterone levels stay high and estrogen finally gets above it, which allows the last bit of sensitivity to kick in, which triggers contractions, which triggers oxytocin, more contractions. So even though we're another animal, our system still works different than a lot of them we compare it to. So you just need an understanding of what we kind of talked about there, and nothing in great depth, but an understanding. Fertilization takes place where?
The uterine tubes.
What's another name for that?
Oviducts or
Fallopian tubes or oviducts, right? I don't know which one I use on the test, but fallopian tubes make more sense to me. But explain secretory phase. Anybody have that?
The blood testes barrier. It occurs when ovaries in the luteal phase. Increased progesterone stimulates the development of uterine glands.
That's it. Progesterone increase, development of uterine glands. That's the secretory phase. The secretory phase, does it fall in the follicular component of the first 14 days or in the luteal component of the second 14 days? No, it'd be in the first 14. Well, it'd be in the latter. I see what you're saying. It'd be in the latter part of the first 14. because increased progesterone starting, but it's not massive at this point. The development of uterine glands, that's what's gonna produce the clear watery mucus, okay? So we need that within a couple of days of ovulation, so the sperm will know where to go. So on that chart in your book, it'll also point that out, so. 36, know the purpose of two major placental hormones. HCG maintains the pregnancy for at least 8 weeks, doesn't it? It also tells you if you're pregnant. That's the one that overflows. And of course, HCS gives us something. You got notes there, Tracy.
No, but I don't guess I've read.
Human, what is this one? Human somatomatropin, isn't it? Chorionic somatomatropin gives us a diabetic-like effect. So you get a little glucose, which you could use right now, and the baby gets a little glucose. But if the baby gets all the glucose, then you'd feel like you're feeling right now.
This is the
You're not
one that
pregnant.
can cause,
Do what?
this is the one that can cause the gestational diabetes.
Yeah, if it's out of whack. Where's sperm stored and matured?
Testes.
Test, more specific, epididymis. 38, what's the most successful method of contraception besides abstinence? Snip.
Vasectomy.
Vasectomy. Chart A likes the snip. Make the man suffer, right, sorry.
They only have to suffer for like 3 days.
I agree.
Seems like an awful long time to me.
It's,
what?
it's actually, it's so less invasive now than before, it could actually be less than that.
Try having your hip bones spread apart while a teenage baby head is.
What forms the blood testing barrier? We're not painting any of these pictures.
Sertoli cells.
Sertoli cells, yep. So no Turners, Klinefelters, meta-female, supermale, we did that in the lab. Female pseudohermaphroditism would be caused by what?
Congenital adrenal hyperplasia.
Adrenal gland hyperplasia. And familiar with gonadotropin hormones, FSH, LH, and HCG, that's the three you want to be familiar with, and we've covered them quite a bit already. Now, you know, above and beyond this will be several scenario questions. There'll be some woman getting chased down by a bear, and, you know, the story's got to end here, though.
She gets eaten.
The only way to prepare for that question is to use your imagination and hope you guess right.
She gets eaten.
Oh, not that brutal. Not that, well, she is from Arkansas, so if one bite, the bear probably walk off and leave her there.
What are we doing?
What was
Any
the last-
questions?
FSH, LH, and what was the third?
HCG.